That is a known working 2ZZ. What's going on, guys? Another quick intro. By the end of this episode, hopefully we are going to have a working 2ZZ in this car. Not running, but a working engine. Let's go. Let's begin with a roundup of where we are at. I have, in the meantime, when I've not been filming because it was boring to look at, I have chucked some seam sealer round relevant areas on the car just to give it a bit of protection. I've blown it in with that horrendously badly colour matched paint, but luckily you can't really see any of it, so that's good. I have whipped out the shifter cables. There's a very loud motorbike in the background, but the shifter cables are out, and I also whipped out the throttle cable. I mentioned these last time, and we will have a look at both in just a second. That, realistically, as soon as I've sorted out these shifter cables, like I said, we'll have a look at them in a second, is about it. I need to get the engine out of the other car. So, the front wheels are back on. I'm going to drop the car down. I'm going to have to do some shoving. There is a car behind it at the moment, which is a bit of a top secret. I'll give you a little sneak peek though. There it is, look, it's old and boxy. That Celica's going in just a minute, hopefully. So, I'm going to put this back down on its wheels. We'll shove it back, and I'll pull the engine out of the Celica. Cheeky little pro tip, steal your own cat before somebody else steals it for you. There it is, ready to pull. What an absolute bastard. The only thing still intact is the rear line on the power steering. Giving that a little spin, but it's just trying to round off. So I'm going to start pulling the engine and trying to get a bit better access to crack that off. Otherwise, I think it's time to get it pulled. And once it's on the crane sat up here, look at the state of those hands. I'm getting someone a useful bit of labour, a mate round. Give us a hand. I do actually have mates, shockingly. And we're going to push this out the way, push that forward, and then crane it straight in. So that should be pretty mad. In the meantime, I'm just going to go and buy a new belt for here, because the power steering's coming off. And it's going to be a lot easier to change the belt while it's out the car than it is in the car. So I'm going to go buy the belt, and we'll come back and give these a little shuffle. Just a little quick one. So on the engine, or gearbox should I say, down here you have a hole. This is on the Yaris box as well. Now the hole in the Celica box has this here, which is literally just a blanking plug. So the speedo signal on the Celica is coming from the ABS ECU. This is out of, it's actually not out of my Yaris box, it's out of an old Yaris box I had which previously broke. This sends the signal direct to the clocks. So I have checked, and this seems, I obviously can't see inside to check the engagement on the gearing, but the diff definitely has the gearing to interface with this. So this fits in, slots in, seems like it's going to work, and we're just going to be able to use a standard plug to run to the Yaris clocks, and the speedo should work. So that's going to be wicked, because I was a little bit worried about that. So yeah, just a little side note for you, if anyone's doing this swap. If not, I don't know, probably not that interesting, but hey ho, on to the next thing. So I said last week's, I'm getting confused, in the video last time that I was going to have to use the throttle cable from the Celica. Incorrect. It would appear I'm going to have to use the throttle cable from the Yaris because it's much longer and it is actually going to reach. I don't think the Celica one will, because it's just way shorter. I'm not going to show you don't really see. This is the Yaris one in place. The only thing is you lose the adjustment here because of the thickness of this. If it becomes an issue, I will probably just remake this here bracket and make it thin, and it will give us the adjustment there. I assume this is just some kind of like mild throttle damping type thing. Anyway, throttle cable off a Yaris. Shifter cables. Now you can see here the extra length. This one is off the Celica. These ones are off the Yaris. Only things to note, I'm going to swap these rubbers over because obviously this one is suited to going through the floor on the Yaris. This one is suited to a Celica, so I need to put the Yaris one on here. This is the bracket that holds it to the floor. Just need to pry this open and pry this open, and again I can swap the bracket. I'm not going to be able to get this heat sleeving off, but I've got some heat tape and I shall be sticking that around there because it comes through in the exhaust tunnel on there and they're going to get roasting hot. So I think they're going to need some protection despite the heat shielding on the exhaust. I'm going to do all the switcheroo on this. We'll pull the gaskets off, and then I might have a go at installing it and we'll have a look. And it's all done. So that's the Celica cable. That's the bracket which we've prized from here. I had to swap the rubber, which did involve putting an extra slit in it to get it off the cable, and then close this back up. Lost the bracket that was on the extra bracket from this cable that was there, and swapped over where it bolts into the car. Again, I had to put an extra slit in here because only one of them is slitted on here. It's a little bit loose in here. Once I've set the length, I don't know, I might wrap some tape or something around it just so it holds it steady. But let's go bolt it in the car.
Meanwhile,
what we have is another minor issue. It didn't occur to me till I started to really think about it that the length here is different, so it affects the amount of slack that you're going to have in the shifter cable. And if we shorten this, you have a load of slack at the other end and it's not going to shift properly. That's the key thing here. I can't run the shifter tower that's standard in the Yaris. As you can see, it's different to the one that's in the Celica. Because of where the shifter cables go through the floor, these need to be central, which is going to mean that the shifter moves back slightly. This is the Celica, by the way. That's going to be slightly annoying, but it's not the end of the world. We could always put a kink in the shifter to overcome that. The other thing, you may remember if you've watched a previous episode, I made a short shift. So this is the Yaris shifter itself. These are the bases. That's the extension piece that gives me a nice short throw. The ball on here is compatible, and what's quite nice is that there's bushes etc on the Celica. It's all metal and it's properly bushed out, so there's a lot less slop than there is in the Yaris tower. This is good. As you can see, you know, this is all metal, this is all metal, this is plastic, sorry. Now this isn't actually normally here, it's actually from here. The Celica, I've popped this off, but the Celica has a bush on both of these, and that bush mates like so. Now the Yaris doesn't have that, and both of these balls are different sizes, so this bush doesn't actually fit on the Yaris ball. So I just need to get another one of these bushes, because it turns out that the bush from here does fit on here and is compatible with that. So simple enough fix. I just need to order one of these, put it on there, then I'm going to run the Yaris shifter in the shifter tower from the Celica. So I can assemble all of that, put it together, and then we're just going to have to make some kind of adapter plate to fit this tower into the floor of the Celica. You see I pulled these apart. It's a bit of a bastard, but such is life. So I'm going to assemble this with this, and we can install the bottom bush at a later date. We can get the plate and everything made up and get the shifter mounted imminently. So let's have a look at that. If you've been watching along in the past, you'll probably remember this. This is the little shifter tower small extension that I made previously for the Yaris, just to bring the shifter up a bit and allow me to run that short shift without it ploughing into the floor. Obviously now we can reuse this. As it stands, this wants to sit something like that, and it hangs right off the back. Now all I'm proposing is to take this off so it's flat, obviously nicely profiled to the Yaris floor pan, which is nice. Take this off flat, basically weld a flat plate all the way across, drill those holes out in it, and I'm probably going to put like I've got here, a mounting for one cable. We'll make this a mounting for the other shifter cable and just angle it up a bit. Job's a good one. So I'm going to crack on, get my fab on, and we'll come back once that's all done. After a quick bit of storage run out on the old phone battery, this is it. Luckily you've all seen me do some mediocre welding before, but it's got some cheeky little captive nuts on it, and that's it. So I think without further ado, the next bit, some peanut butter there, is to go and stick it in the car and see what happens. I'm still missing this little thing, so if anyone happens to have one, let me know, because it turns out they're quite hard to source, but we can get it mocked up in the car for the time being without that and retrofit it in a bit. It's only 4 bolts, so let's go. That is that in place, as you can see, or not see probably. It's all in there. The shifter cables actually go into the adapter. There's a little bit I need to clearance there still. I just haven't quite taken enough out, but it's going to work. So all that's left, I'm just going to put some heat sleeving on the, look at that ash, gross, on the front, and that'll be that done. Quick one about belts. I'm going to be taking the AC off this, so this is going to go. The standard belt obviously is now too long because it doesn't route around that anymore, which means only one thing. It means we need to buy a new belt, which is not a standard fit item. So we just need to work out the length of the belt. Luckily, this is super simple to spec the belt we need. So all I've done is I've got the old belt and I've cut it in half. We'll just put a cut in it there. I know it's got 6 ribs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 ribs, so I am just going to route it around where I know it goes. Now, I will confess I've actually cut this already to around the right length, but the idea still stands behind it. So, as you see, that's the routing, like that, and then it goes around there in the grooves, and that's the length the belt needs to be, nearly. Obviously that's pretty slack. There's a bit more slack to be pulled out of that, and it'll overlap, but there's no bring on the tensioner, so it needs to be slightly shorter than that. But because that's now cut to the length, stretch it out, you measure it, we know it's 6 ribs, so it's 6 pk, and then the length that follows in millimeters is the part number. So this belt here, which is too short, is a 6 pk 1420, and that means it's 6 ribs and it's 1420 millimeters long. If you stretch this out now, it is 1620 millimeters long. So I've ordered a 1605, and we'll see if that fits and gets enough tension off the tensioner. That's not coming until Sunday, so I'm going to whip the compressor off and stick this in the car anyway, because it's exciting. Right, there we go. That is a known working 2ZZ. All the mounts lined up absolutely sweet. As you can see, winter is coming and it's getting pretty dark now, but it's freaking in there. How sweet is that? And the car's actually sat, you're probably not going to see this for toffee, but the car's actually sat down on its wheels with the engine in. I was hoping to maybe get the drive shafts on this episode, But I think what we're going to be looking at is next episode. This is wonky. Next episode, we're going to be looking at doing the drive shafts. We're going to hook up the gear cable, probably do the clutch slave, and I think after that, we're going to look at the heating as well, probably, as long as I remember to order the bits. After all that though, there is absolutely no more avoiding it, and I'm going to have to start looking at the wiring, which I know I haven't been looking forward to that much, and I know it's the sticking point for most people. But until then, have a good one, and I'll see you next week.